So everybody, behind me right here, I actually have the M2 iPad Air, and in this video, because I think the M2 iPad Air is actually one of the more slept on iPads now that the M4 iPad Pro is out, I wanted to give you guys my favorite accessories for the M2 iPad Air because it's essentially just a repackaged M2 or M1 iPad Pro, which means that 90 to 95% of the accessories that worked with the iPad Pro now work with the M2 iPad Air, from USB accessories to magnetic stands like the one we have behind me. So without further ado, let's talk about my favorite M2 iPad Air accessories to help you make some decisions on the accessories that you're going to physically need for your M2 iPad Air, because honestly, the M2 iPad Air is probably the best iPad out for most. But let's get into it. So as I said in the beginning, since the M2 iPad Air is essentially just a repackaged iPad Pro from previous years, a lot of these accessories will work with previous iPad Pros. The only real physical difference that you're going to need to take into account is the fact that this is Touch ID versus Face ID, but I'm going to have a full review on the M2 iPad Air, so definitely stay tuned for that video because the M2 iPad Air is actually an amazing bargain for what you're getting from a power and usability standpoint. But the first accessory that I want to talk about is the X33 by a company called Kyushu, and I recently wrote an article about it because it's one of those accessories that once you use it, you're surprised that it took this long for a company to actually make this, because at first glance, it's just a magnetic stand, right? So you look at it, you just throw your iPad on there that attaches via the magnets that are on there, and it's a very familiar third-party stand, right? It rotates 360 degrees, it rotates 180 degrees the other way, but if you look closely, the iPad is actually charging. And the way that it's charging is that this magnetic stand has pin connectors on the front, and then it also has a USB-C port on the rear of the stand. So this allows the actual stand to charge the iPad Air via the pin connectors the same way that the Magic Keyboard charges the iPad Air via pin connectors. And I absolutely love this. It does charge, I believe, to up to 18 watts of fast charging. I've tested it with my M1 iPad Pro, with my M2 iPad Air, and it works great. It doesn't get hot to the touch. I've charged it from 5% to 90% with no issues, and it charges relatively quickly. And the beautiful part about this accessory is that because it's charging via the pin connectors, it allows that USB-C port to still be open for things like data pass-through and USB-C dongles and things of that nature. So the Kyushu X33 I think is a must-have for anybody. They make models for, like I said, the previous iPad Pros, the previous iPad Airs, the new M2 iPad Air, and then finally the M4 iPad Pro as well, although they are technically different because the magnets don't work with each other. So the M4 iPad Pro version only works with that one, versus the M2 iPad Air version works with a bunch of other iPads from previous years. And now I'm a big fan of using my iPad Pro or my iPad Air in a desk setup situation, and that's why that stand works so well, because I'm able to put it on the stand itself and then be at my desk and have it at eye level. And to coincide with the desk, you might notice that I am using a different chair right now, and this is by a company called ProtoArc. This is their ErgoChair 100, and the main reason I want to talk about this one, for the same reasons that the M2 iPad Air is such a good value, is it's the best bang for buck that I've used on office chairs. Like, I've tested probably 5, 6, 7 of the last 2 years, and this one is, I believe, $180 on Amazon, but there's a coupon right now, so you can get this for, I believe, $140. It took me like 10 minutes to set up. It has everything that you would need from an actual basic chair. It has lumbar support, you can move it up and down, you can lock the actual back of the actual seat itself, or lay it all the way back as well. It comes in this nice kind of gray two-tone colorway, which I absolutely like, because to me, there's nothing worse than just a black-on-black chair that gives you no kind of personality or anything like that. So ProtoArc has been able to give a bunch of value at that price point for desk chairs, and honestly, the fact that it's a little bit more lightweight and the build materials probably aren't like metal and things like that, it makes it easier to move around on carpeted areas. Like, for instance, in my office, we do have carpet, so normally with those more expensive, heavier set chairs, it's a little bit more tedious to move that chair around. So this one is very easy to move around, holds up weight easily, and like I said, it has lumbar support. You can lean it back, you can move it up and down. Even the armrests themselves are kind of 3D armrests, meaning that you can move them side to side, move them up and down, so you get the perfect fit and finish for the actual Ergo chair from ProtoArc. So if you guys are looking for a budget chair that's brand new, that has a nice aesthetic, and won't break the bank, this one's gonna be the way to go. So then when it comes to Apple accessories for the M2 iPad Air, one thing to take into consideration is that unfortunately the new M2 iPad Air, since it moved the selfie camera to the landscape orientation, the Apple Pencil 2 does not actually work and is not compatible with the M2 iPad Air. So you have two options from Apple. You have the USB-C Apple Pencil, which I believe is $80 or $70 on Apple's website, and then you have the brand new Apple Pencil Pro, which also supports hover and things like that, and the squeeze feature, and obviously being able to rotate the Apple Pencil with different pen tips and things like that. So I would honestly recommend going with the Apple Pencil Pro just because it's so robust. It has a lot of awesome features. Even if you aren't an artist, because I by no means am an artist, the Apple Pencil Pro gives you enough features and kind of future-proofs you a little bit, because it also has Find My support. It's got the haptic engine in there, which makes it feel very nice whenever you're actually using it. And the squeeze functionality allows you to open shortcuts. So the Apple Pencil Pro is definitely the way to go, but if you do want to save 50 bucks, the Apple Pencil USB-C gives you 95% of the features, if not a little bit more, of the Apple Pencil Pro. It just doesn't have things like Find My or the haptic engine, and you have to charge it physically with a USB-C cable. And then it does work with the old generation Magic Keyboard for the iPad Pro that we've seen before. It does not work with the new Magic Keyboard for the iPad Pro, but I'm going to avoid that one for right now because for $350, especially now there's so many third-party options out there, I'm not going to recommend that one right away. So I'm actually going to stay in that kind of desk setup situation. I'm going to recommend an actual external keyboard and a mouse. So for the keyboard itself, I like to keep it slim and light and very aesthetically pleasing, so I'm going to go with the Satechi X1 Slim. You guys have heard me speak about the Satechi X1 Slim for years now. It's one of my favorite keyboards because it's as close as you can get to the actual Magic Keyboard, the Mac Magic Keyboard from Apple without actually spending that premium and that money. So the best thing about this is that it does connect up to 3 different devices. It charges via USB-C and not Lightning. I've only charged it probably 3 times in total in the last 2 years, and I like the slim, compact nature of it. So that's by Satechi, the X1 Slim. And then for the mouse, I actually like to stay with Satechi as well, and it's their M1 mouse. And what I like about this is that for $30, it's pretty unbeatable, right? You get great build quality, it's very lightweight, it's easy to move around. It does only connect to one device, but again, for $29.99, it's hard to complain that you can't connect to multiple devices. You are able to easily use it with your iPad Air and get the same exact functionality out of that mouse than you would with any other mouse. And again, Satechi's a reputable brand. It comes in a bunch of different cool metallic colors, so pick your poison. The Satechi M1 mouse is definitely a good solution. And now let's head over to that USB-C port of the iPad Air. So the USB-C port of the iPad Air supports USB 3 speeds, which basically means that it can transfer up to 10 gigabytes per second. So that is still extremely quick. Now, it's not the USB 3.1 Gen 2 port or the Thunderbolt port that the iPad Pro has, but again, if you need the iPad Pro, then you know who you are. Go get the iPad Pro and get those faster transfer speeds. But the first thing I'm going to mention is a USB-C dock or USB-C dongle, and the one that I'm using is the 8-in-1 by a company called Dockcase. This is their Explorer edition. And what I like about this, and I've actually mentioned this one also in the past, is that it has a couple tricks up its sleeve. Firstly, like I mentioned, it is an 8-in-1, so it has all the necessary culprits. So you have your PD port, you have your HDMI 2.0 port, your USB-A 3.2 Gen 2 port, you also have another faster charger for USB-C, you have another USB-A port, and you also have an Ethernet port. But what I like about this is that you actually have a small 1-inch by 1-inch IPS LCD panel, which is kind of like a diagnostic screen. So we're able to see everything in real time as it's happening, from charging speeds to being able to see how fast data is transferring to seeing what's connected to it. So honestly, the nerd in me kind of geeks out about this a little bit because it does have a transparent front so you can actually see everything that's in there, but then also the diagnostic screen lets you know like how fast this is charging, how fast data is moving, what kind of monitor you're using alongside the iPad Air, if it's pushing 4K 30 or 4K 60. I'm a big fan of seeing all those little statistics kind of lighting up in real time. And then depending on who you are, the storage situation on the iPad Air, you might not want to spend a premium on the storage from Apple itself. So I like to recommend the Samsung T7 SSD. They go from 500 gigs to I believe up to 2 or even 4 terabytes now at this point. I have the 2 terabyte version, but it has been the most tried and true SSD that I've used, and I've used it for years. And I've tried other ones that are supposed to be very high end and very expensive, and some way, somehow they become corrupt. So the Samsung T7 is my end-all be-all for external SSDs, so you can use that directly with your iPad Air or connect it to the USB-C hub that we mentioned earlier. So that is a great SSD solution if you are looking for one, if you are doing, things that involve a little bit more creativity like video editing and things like that. And then the last USB-C related one that I want to mention is the charging brick, because in the box you do get a 20-watt charging brick from Apple, and again, that's here in the US. I heard that in the EU you actually don't even get a charging brick, which is kind of insane, especially for an $800 or a $1,000 product, and in the EU it's even more expensive because it's in euros. But anyway, to each their own. So the one I'm going to recommend here is also by Satechi, funny enough. This is our 108-watt charger. Now, you don't need 108 watts to actually charge this thing. I believe it does max out at 33 watts and maybe even 39 watts. Apple does state that you can use a bigger wattage charger than the one that comes in the box to charge it at even faster speeds, but it doesn't tell you exactly what it supports fully. Now, we did learn that the iPad Pro supports up to 45-watt fast charging. So we did learn that at a minimum, the iPad Air does support up to 33 watts of fast charging, maybe even a little bit more. But what I like about this one is that it is able to charge not only your iPad Air, but it has 3 ports. So you can charge your iPhone with the USB-C cable, you can charge your MacBook, and charge everything at full speed with no worries, and be able to charge all your devices very quickly. So that's just a solution for you to be able to have, but there's also other ones like the small 30 watt bricks that you can check out, or even smaller 45 or 60 watt bricks that have 2 ports instead of 3. So there's a bunch that I'm going to list down below for you guys to check out. And then a few more miscellaneous items that I wanted to mention. First is going to be a capture card. Now this capture card situation is one of my favorite things to do with any iPad for that matter, not just the iPad Air. And basically what it does is this capture card allows you to use your iPad or your iPad Air or iPad Pro. So if you want to physically connect via HDMI your PlayStation or your Xbox or your Switch, or anything that has an HDMI out, you can actually do this with a capture card. Without the capture card, you are not able to do this, because basically what the capture card does is that it tricks the iPad into being a dummy display. You do need a corresponding app, like the one that I use is by a company called Orion. It is a free app. They do have in-app purchases to get kind of unlock a few more features, but at the free level, it lets you play HD games and lets you plug in your Xbox directly in there. Like I've played a bunch of Madden games on here while my wife is using the bigger TV, and it's absolutely awesome. So all you need is like a $16 or $20 capture card, and then you're able to directly plug in any console into your iPad and be able to use it as a dummy display. And it's not just for consoles, it's for anything that has an HDMI out, so keep that in mind. And then with that topic for gaming, I do like to recommend a controller. As we know, by default, Apple does support using things like MFI controllers, Xbox, PlayStation, even Switch Joy-Cons. So if you guys do already have one of those laying around, just use one of those. But if you don't have a console laying around and you are in the market for a new controller, Moga makes some awesome controllers. I use their X5 controller because not only does it kind of have the same form factor as an Xbox controller, which I personally like more than the PlayStation controllers. Let me know in the comment down below if that's going to trigger you. But it also does have a smaller battery to charge up other devices. Technically, it has the iPhone more in mind than, let's say, something like an iPad or anything else, but obviously it still works perfectly fine with the iPad, and it is able to add a little bit extra charge to your iPad if you do want to do that, and it even has a lightning port on there if that's what you want to do for that particular model. But Moga also makes a bunch of other ones if you guys want to check it out. And then lastly, what kind of iPad accessory video would this be if I don't include a Paperlike product, which I absolutely love? And this one I'm going to use their cleaning kit because, again, their cleaning kit has been awesome. I want to be able to have a fingerprintless display, and this cleaning kit does everything in a small package and does it correctly. It doesn't have any frills or anything extra. You literally just have a little bottle with that cleaning solution built in there, and it brings some other kind of little pellets for you to be able to add more cleaning solution after the fact. And then the actual spray bottle is encased with a microfiber cloth, so you don't need to bring an additional kind of microfiber cloth on the side. You just use that one, you spray it, wipe it, and you're good to go. So those are my M2 iPad Air accessories. Like I mentioned, if you have an iPad Pro or an older iPad Air, most of these, if not all of them, will work with those iPads as well, but I wanted to focus on the M2 iPad Air because, like I've mentioned, it is going to be the best selling iPad in my personal opinion. Even with the 11-inch one for $600, 128 gigs, compared to spending an additional $400 for something like the 11-inch iPad Pro. Again, you know who you are if you want to go for the Pro. For me, for instance, I'm going to go with the Pro 10 out of 10 times because, you know, the iPad Pro is my main computer and I love to use it. But if you're somebody that just wants to casually use an iPad Air or casually use your iPad for content consumption, but wants a little bit of power to be able to do a little bit more from time to time, iPad Air is going to be the way to go, everybody. But that's going to do for this video. If you made it to the end, leave a little dolphin in the comments down below so I know you made it to the end. Stay tuned for more iPad content because we have a lot more coming. And I'm excited for WWDC to see exactly what they're going to do with iPadOS, see if they're going to update iPadOS 18, give us some exclusive features on the Pro side versus the Air side. A lot of things yet remain to be seen. But if you guys want to watch more videos like this one, click on one of these right here. And until next time, I'm Fernando, and I'm out of here, everybody. Peace. Everything will be linked down below. Everything will be linked down below for you guys to check out with the best pricing that I find so far. Peace, everybody.